So with that, I see that Chris has already joined us, which is great. So I'm going to introduce Chris. Chris is the founder and principal at TechChair, a data science consultancy focused on data strategy and team development. He was previously Chief Innovation Officer and Head of Research Science at ORC International. And he confesses being a total nerd, and he's never happier than when he's elbows deep in code. Welcome, Chris. Chris is going to talk to us about why language transformer models will transform the insights industry. So thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and hopefully you can hear me. And I am going to hit share screen, and let me see. Share. And hopefully people can see this.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Excellent. So that was a really great talk by Don Abraham there, and I was very interested. And Don, sometime you and I, we need to talk about a lot of things, because there's some very exciting things and some great points of agreement with me on what you were saying. In particular, I liked the idea of your predictable surprises, and I think that's a very powerful way to look at things. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to suggest to people that today what I'm going to show you is a predictable surprise. This is something that's already happening. This is something that I'm going to show you a capability that if you've not seen before, you may be a little shocked by. But one thing I hope is that you'll come out of this talk, two things. One is that you'll be really excited about the possibilities. And the other is I'm hoping that you'll be just a little bit terrified, because if you come out of this talk a little bit terrified, you've got the point. Okay, so you may or may not have heard of language transformer models. And language transformer models, it's a relatively new term. And you see here a little bit of a definition of what they are. This new class of models being developed capable of transforming data into insights. That sounds pretty interesting, yeah. One of the things I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be showing you quite a lot of text in this, and I'm hoping that, there we go. Going to be showing you quite a lot of text. And one thing I'm going to say up front is a lot of the text I show you, I did not write. This particular paragraph was written by an AI system called GPT-3, which is the one that I'll be showing, although there are other systems that do very similar things. Basically, I asked the system, will language transformer models transform the insights industry? And this is what the system replied. Okay, now just at this top level of credible writing, you'll see actually it's pretty good. By the way, nothing I show you has been edited. Okay, I've not gone in and edited it for English or whatever, but this is what the system comes back with. And it's my belief that this class of models, which are very new, are going to be very, very influential in many domains. But it's not just me that thinks that. Actually, after I put in the proposal for this talk, but before today, of course, the New Yorker ran this article, which I highly recommend you read if you can, which just says the computers are getting better at writing, and that's a good way to think of it. And I thought it was interesting, given the title of the talk I proposed. It actually answers the question. The New Yorker says, whatever field you're in, if it uses language, it's about to be transformed. And I would argue that in insights, language is fundamental to what we do. So the fact that we have this real shift in capability is actually going to affect us in many ways. And later on in this, I will show you a number of the ways that it might affect us. I'm not going to go into the technology. The technology, it's an incredibly clever technology, okay, the language transformer models. It was first brought to light in this 2017 paper. So we're talking about a technology that from its very inception is only 4 years old. And this paper, Attention is All You Need. This is the academic paper, and you'll see most of the people behind it are from Google. It actually completely changed the way we thought about natural language processing and the way that computers generate text. And after that, there was this explosion of systems that came about, and I've listed some of them on the right here. And in particular, there's this one system that came out just under a year ago now called GPT-3. And GPT-3 pretty much blew away everybody within the AI community. It's a system that's live, it's real, you can use it, I use it. It's very difficult to get access to. There's only limited beta access at the moment. I have limited beta access, which is what I'm going to show you. But just to say, there are other systems out there as well. And the other one you'll hear mentioned a lot, if you're familiar with the area, is BERT, which is Google's own version. GPT-3 is from a company called OpenAI, but based on a lot of funding from Microsoft. So let's talk about what does this actually do. Now, what I've done is I've written a little piece here. So, you know, and this is kind of the little party trick that everybody starts with when we play with these things. So I said, once upon a time, in the magical kingdom of the Insights Association, Queen Melanie decreed there would be a grand conference. She declared that it would be called Next, and all her courtiers were excited. Now, what I want you to do is to imagine that I wrote that down, showed it to you, and then gave you the pen, and then said, okay, you carry on, okay? Because that's basically how these models work. You give them what's called a prompt, and then you say, now you carry on. So shall we see what GPT-3 thinks should come after that? So GPT-3 wrote this: they started to get dressed up and they prepared the best cheese crackers and chocolate brownies and punch you could imagine, as well as hundreds of little notebooks and pens. I want to tell you, the robots are onto us. They know that when we have conferences, we have hundreds of little notebooks and pens, okay? Where it got that from, I do not know, and I cannot tell you, but it knows that if there's a conference, there's hundreds of little notebooks and pens. Okay, they sent out invitations. And as you can see, as you read this, it's done a number of things, okay? It knows what a conference is. I didn't train this. I didn't tell it anything about the Insights Association. I didn't tell it what a conference was. I didn't even explicitly ask to write a fairy story, but I did start with Once Upon a Time, which of course is a very suggestive way of starting a story. So that's what it does. And I think you can see it's carried on the style, and it's understood what conferences are and what to do with them. But it goes further than that. It carried on with a point of tension. Stories have a point of tension, okay? The grand conference never happened. The Queen was a little lost. They got together and asked a few questions, okay? What were they going to do? How are we going to figure out what they need? Okay, so it's adding this point of tension in what it's written, okay? It knows the structure of a story. And then it resolves the story. Someone had a great idea. Let's ask the people what they want from a conference. Have you heard things like that before? Let's ask them what they want to know. And it came up with, let's make a survey. That was the solution to all ills, okay, is to run a survey. Now, here's the thing. This was an untrained model. I did not train it. The only hint that there was anything to do with market research was the fact that I said it was the great land of the Insights Association. And it knew that that probably means somewhere there's going to be a survey involved somewhere, okay? If you think about it, getting from the prompt to where the system got to shows an incredible amount of being able to understand and parse that initial prompt. And this, by the way, unfortunately, like I say, I do have actual access to GPT-3. This is what's called the GPT-3 playground, which is where you can try prompts out. Unfortunately, their terms and conditions are such that I'm not allowed to do it live. I had to sign my life away to get access. But this is what it looks like. You can see that on the bolded part, that's what I wrote. And then everything else is what the system replied when I handed the pen over to the system. Okay, so you can see there where I stopped and said to the system, okay, now you continue this. And that's what I did. And by the way, this was the first thing it came up with. There's no cherry picking here. This is what it wrote based on that prompt. So that's fine. It's a good party trick. You know, what's the big deal with this? Why are people getting so excited? Why are some people saying that this is a technology that's too dangerous to let loose? Okay, there's actually been arguments as to whether this technology should even be allowed to be out there and generally available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to show you how it could be used in research. So think about this prompt. Okay, this is what I've written. Okay. I said dog, perro, farm, granja, child, niño. And then the next thing I've said is, excuse me, can you direct me to the nearest railway station? Stop for a second and say, what should be generated there? Okay, well, let's see what GPT-3 does. Disculpe, puede indicarme a la estación de ferrocarril más cercana. It has exactly worked out what I wanted from the prompt. This isn't on a Spanish trained model. This is on the plain model with no training. So what's actually going on here? It's all in the prompt. First, there's a generic part of the part which says, this is the kind of thing I want to do. If it starts with dog, after the colon, I want a perro. If it starts with farm, I want granja. Okay. And then you'll notice there's a big difference in complexity between that and the specific part of the prompt, but it still knows, oh, okay, there's something English on the left, there's something Spanish on the right, okay, that's what I'm going to give you. And this is the massive breakthrough. This is what has got everybody in the AI community absolutely excited about what's going on. Is that in the past, if we wanted to write a Spanish translation system, we would have to train it on a lot of Spanish. Okay, we would have to go into this huge training thing, which was beyond this. Now we can do what's called few-shot learning, which is to just give it a few examples and then say, okay, and now I want you to do it. This is really exciting. This is what has got everybody really very, very excited and trying to understand how do we use this, because this, people are really not even, everybody knows this is amazingly powerful. People are still trying to get their heads around how powerful it is. So let me give you an example of how I've used this. In our insights, one of the things we do a lot of deck chair data, we analyze a lot of behavioral data, things like that. It's always a mess. Behavioral data is a horrible mess. And often we're trying to extract things from really messy things. So here's a prompt. The prompt at the top, and think about the Spanish example here. The prompt at the top says bananas, fruit, pork chops, meat, planters, dry roast peanuts, snacks. It's categorizing. It's a simple categorization. And then you see the specific prompt is Yopik's custom couple bracelets engraved, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff in there. So what can we do? Well, we can run this through the system. And in our case, we ran a couple of million of these through the system. And you'll see what it's done. This is a slightly different example, but you can see what it's done is it's taken that open-end stuff with all its misspellings and all the strange formatting and stuff that you get, and it's categorized everything. And it did it really fast. And like I say, we could do a couple of million of those and using that for categorization. I didn't have to train the model. I just had to give it an appropriate prompt. And that's an example of prompt. So that's one example of really using it in insights, and we've used it, and it's an order of magnitude better at doing this than some of the other AI systems we've been using to do this kind of thing. And so what I'd like to do to finish with now, very quickly, I'm going to run through some random examples within research to see how it might use. This is an example. We say, what about writing a qualitative discussion guide? Okay, we gave it that prompt at the top, which any of you who've written qual discussion guides will find, very, very familiar. Discussion guide, what it's about, who the audience is, what the warm-up is. And then GPT-3 came back with these questions, which I think you'll agree are very reasonable questions. If any of you are working in panel or doing any online stuff, you should be very nervous about this. This is a breakthrough tool for cheaters. Okay, so here's a typical example of a scale of 1 to 10, likely to recommend, so our NPS question, and then the typical, why did you give that rating? Okay, the food is great, the beer is great, the atmosphere is great. I love that they have a lot of vegetarian options and their wait staff is always great. All it did was know that I asked about the Wonky Bar and Grill, and it came up with that. This is already, GPT-2, the predecessor for this, I know for a fact is already being used by cheaters. If, like me, you usually look at open ends to look at the quality of a data set, you can't do that anymore, okay? Open ends are no longer a good indicator of the quality of a data set. But what about a CX survey? I mean, surely an AI can't write a survey. Okay, well, let's see. I've given here this is for Wonky Cars Auto Repair. Okay, and this is the prompt I've given it. I've only given it this. Thank you for agreeing to take our customer experience survey. And I start with the gender, and I'm sorry, I know we should not start with the gender. But I could explain why I did it that way for the prompt. But that's not what I would normally recommend. But anyway, what's your gender? What's your age group? Let's see what it does. Okay. How would you rate our staff? How would you rate our quality of service? Rate the quality of the advice you received. How would you rate the cleanliness of the workshop? Somehow it knows that Wonky Cars Auto Repair has a workshop. Okay. Quality of the courtesy car. Okay. It managed to write the skeleton of a decency, starting point CX survey, all done in about 2 seconds. What if I just change one phrase in here? Instead of the auto repair, Wonky Cars Auto Repair, what if I just change it to Wonky Burger Saloon? What does it give us now? How often do you visit the saloon? How was your meal? Rate your experience. What was your favorite item? I love this. I love the fact that it knows that something called the Wonky Burger Saloon probably has an item on its menu called the Wonky Burger. Okay. That is, again, a couple of seconds, it just comes up with this, and it knows the difference between what a CX survey for an auto repair shop and a CX survey for a burger joint is. And it knows what people talk about. I'm actually quite excited about this application of it. Okay, you let it do a secondary research for you. If you say to GPT-3, what are the most requested improvements for the MacBook Air? And I have a MacBook Air, so I know that these are true. They are a Retina display, a larger SSD, a larger battery, a faster processor. Again, I didn't train it at all. The only training is that prompt. What are the most requested improvements for a MacBook Air? So hopefully that's given you some idea of how this can all be used within research. And so the obvious question, and this is my last slide, is should I be worried about the effects of AI on market research jobs? I think the answer is no. I don't think we can easily be replaced by AI. Okay. It involves a lot of subjective and qualitative elements, things that computers and AI struggle with. Okay. We still need humans to challenge the findings and to interpret the results. And those of you who are way ahead of me will know that that was the answer that GPT-3 gave to that question. So I think I'm at the end. I don't know if I have any time for questions, but that's what I wanted to show you.
Chris, thank you very much. I think that your intention of having people somewhat petrified while at the same time excited was achieved. I was looking at the chat, and there's parents that are worried about it, and then us as researchers as well. We have a minute, so maybe I can ask you a couple of questions that we have. Can you present the code frame with categories? I'm not entirely sure we will be able to do this now, but potentially you can connect with Melanie so we can offer that offline. Melanie, I don't know if this is possible.
Sorry, can you, what was the question? I couldn't quite catch.
The question was, can you present the code frame with categories?
Preset. Can you preset the code frame with categories?
Yes, actually, so there's some tricks you can do. I've only showed you the completion part. There's another part which is called semantic search and characterization. And typically what we do is we actually can do it two passes is how I usually do it, where I let it do it in code completion, and then I actually fold the categories back into the categories of interest. So yes, there's a way to do that. I've only showed you the very top level there of how this can be done.
Right. We have another question, which is, what is the processing time like?
Almost instantaneous. Everything I showed you in this, the system came back with it faster than a human could type it. Okay. Now, when we do things like the million, the million, 2 million things, there we're talking, multi-hour, multi-day runs to actually do the millions. But to do the things I'm showing you, it comes back faster than a human can type.
Got it. We have another question, which is, do you think that this could write a book
Yeah.
at some point?
Yes, and it's already happened. There are books on Amazon at the moment that were written by GPT-3. There's a famous case of somebody who wrote a blog and got 60,000 responses and lots of arguments to the content of the blog written by GPT-3. So that is what actually, that's already happening. Now, people aren't always, now, OpenAI, the people who made this particular system, actually insist in their terms and conditions that you let people know. Not everybody's following those terms and conditions at the moment, and there are some issues of people publishing things. I mean, there's a big issue with non-content books on Amazon anyway, but there are already books on Amazon that have been written.
So we're a couple of minutes over, but we have a break afterwards. So Queen Melanie, is it okay to continue with questions?
Well, thank you for the Queen Melanie, but maybe just one or two, because we really want to give people the time to just stand up and move.
Perfect. So I'll ask you one more. Is there a software similar to GPT-3 that is commercially available? You mentioned BERT, and then the follow-up to that is it affordable?
Right. So yes, so GPT-3 is available on a limited beta at the moment, and you have to. I actually wrote to one of the founders and crawled and begged and got access. It is a commercial system. You pay for it, but the pricing isn't crazy for this kind of system. So they are opening it up more and more. It's just early days at the moment. So GPT-3 will become available to people more generally. There are other systems that if you have the ability to host your own quite large models, you can do. There's GPT-2, which is actually the system before this, which is completely available as open source. You can. I've got a crappy old iMac here that I'm running it. I do have GPT-2 running on this crappy old iMac, and it actually does pretty good, not nearly as good as GPT-3, but that's available. And for a lot of things, and I know that for things like, I mentioned the cheetah problem, that's what they're using. They're using GPT-2. Expect to see more systems like this out there. Like I say, Microsoft was a big contributor to this GPT-3, and they are rolling out their own services. So Microsoft should have some, I would expect them, I don't have any inside knowledge, but I would expect Microsoft to be offering their service soon. Google has something called BERT that you can get, but it's yes, they're beginning to roll out, and they are accessible. It's just GPT-3 itself is difficult to get access to right now.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat if you can just type it through. But with
Yeah.
that, I'm going to thank you for your time. Chris, thank you. And